Hi guys, I got a little caught up on references and values in our last class. So I'm going to do a quick video where I just show you a little bit of the difference there and clean up like what I was maybe saying in class. So I'm just going to fire up IRB, and what you got to do is follow along alongside. So I'm going to go, relatively normal speed, but you should go ahead and stop and experiment with this yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and make an array. I'm gonna call that array X. Okay, so um, what happens here is that we have an array. It gets allocated what called the heap in Ruby, which is basically just a space for objects, and then we have a reference back to that array, and that reference is called X. So anytime that we look at if we refer another reference y equals X. Now there's still only one array out in the heap. We've got two different names for it. The first name is X, next name is Y. So if I say X and I put a value into it, and then I look at Y, that's going to be the same thing. X and Y are the same thing. And the same thing, Y, I put a value into it, that's going to be the same thing. All right. Now, further, if I go and I make another array, and I say put X or Y into it, X and Y are both the same thing. So I'm actually, in this array, I'm actually have two copies of the exact same, two references to the exact same data structure. So there's one array out in the heap that both X and Y point to, and then there's another array that actually has two references to that first array. So if I say X shovel 5, and then look at Z, then now I see that same array in there twice. And I actually can access it the same way. So if I say Z of 0, so that's going to be, the Z of 0 is going to be a reference to the first array we created. And I can put into that, and now so forth. So this can be a little, this can be a little crazy. This is not honestly something that you run into that much in just day-to-day programming. It's kind of more like a metaphysical exploration. But basically, you've got the idea that you have objects that are out in the heap, which is the place that objects are stored, and then you can reference them by all kinds of different names. Let me just show you one last thing before we shut down here. What I actually had was I had a hash, and that hash was called session. Um, so session here, we're just going to represent it as a simple hash. It actually in Rails it's structured as a more complicated object, but let's go ahead and represent it as a simple hash here. Okay, and so what I did in class is I said we're going to create an object, and we're going to call it session messages. Session messages, and we're going to set it to empty array, and then I'm going to take the value and I'm going to assign that into a variable, and I called that one messages. Okay, and then what I did was I said, oh, you can pop a message in here. And then I was surprised initially in class that I don't actually have to store the array messages back in a session. But as you can see, I actually originally stored it into a session back here on line 12. So no surprise, session messages is in there. It is the same thing. The thing that actually got me caught up was that I'll just show it to you just so that I can kind of show a little bit of a different view here. Um, what I thought that I had done was just assign messages to an empty array and then manipulated messages. And at this point, the thing that was session, it wouldn't have any reference to the messages thing. So this messages would be nil. But then if I were to put messages into it, now session messages is the same value as messages. So it's like it was really not really that complicated. It was a very simple idea. So you can experiment with this idea of references in your own Ruby code. Arrays and hashes, they always keep references. Strings are a little bit different. So you go ahead and experiment with strings on your own. Kind of see how that goes. and we can talk about this in class more. Or Paul probably has a lot to say about this topic. So okay, so that's references and objects. Objects are stored in the heap, and I'm going to link in a quick reference on this that kind of goes into a lot of detail about pass by reference and pass by value. But the truth is, just doing a little bit of experimentation in the console will clear this up in your mind.